So here we are in Lightroom. I use Lightroom Classic just because that's what I find to be easiest. These are all of my photos here. I took, as you can see here, 1,905 photos at this show. All right, so what I normally start by doing is going through and rating all of my photos. I'm just going to show you how to do a couple of them and not every single one, obviously, because then you'll be sitting here forever. But just to give you an idea, I'd say this one is, I give that a 2. This is probably another 2. The first bunch did not turn out too great necessarily, just because I didn't have the white balance set correctly, because the lights were very blue and the automatic white balance was not working too well. But the first band that went up during this show was a really young band called Bleeder, and they were actually pretty good. They have like 30-something listeners, monthly listeners on Spotify. So then this photo, caught my eye, so I'm gonna go into the develop window and then zoom in, see if it's in focus. Obviously got a little bit of grain from the ISO. But yeah, I think I'm gonna do something with that later. So I'm gonna give that a 4. Then go back to the library, because the difference is that when you're in the library window, it'll just load a preview, versus when you're in the develop window, it'll load the whole raw file, which is like a 30 or 40 megabyte photo. Whereas I can just scroll through much more quickly if I'm just looking at the previews. And this, again, is not an exact science. I'm just kind of going through and marking the ones that I'm gonna want to edit. See, like I would have liked this photo, but as you can see, like right here, he's kind of overexposed and the highlights in his face are really blown out. Ooh, I actually like this photo quite a bit. So I'm gonna give this a 4. And anything that I give a 4 is what I'm gonna go back and edit later, and you'll see that once I go through and pick out all of these. Now, here we are with Signals Midwest. So this is the band that I came to see. I'm just gonna go through and rate the rest of these photos, and I'll be back with the ones that I'm gonna edit, and then I'll show you how I go about doing that. Went through and picked out all of my photos. So now I'm gonna go over to the develop window, and I would typically start with preset, but I don't know if I have anything that would work well for this. So I'm gonna go in, change the white balance. That's gonna be too much. Change the white balance. Then go down to the bottom for built-in profile corrections for the lens. I was shooting this on my Tamron 17-28, so there's chromatic aberration and sometimes a little bit of distortion in the frame. So I'm gonna bring the exposure down, contrast up a bit, because I'm gonna want like an angstier look for this. Highlights down so you can see what we're looking at. Shadows, I think I'm gonna bring up a little bit. Whites can come down, blacks can go down. Add a little bit of haze because there's some noise. And then vibrance up and saturation up a little bit. And then I will go through here and play with the tone curve a little bit. So this is like the overall. So I'm gonna bring the highlights down, lights down, darks down, and then shadows up a little bit. Then I'm gonna do kind of the same thing with the white. I have 132 photos, so I'm not gonna go through. So this photo is looking kind of purple, so I should be able to bring it into, let's see if I wanna go, I'm gonna wanna bring this a little bit into the blue, shadows blue, and then like the highlights a touch red. Green, we're gonna wanna pull this out of the pink a little bit, just a touch, because these sliders you can see will drastically affect the color of the photo. So I'm gonna reset that. Tad yellow, so that should look pretty close to normal. And then this is pretty dark and far back, because I was shooting this on a pretty wide angle. So let's see. Yeah, 17 millimeters. Crop this in a little bit for sure. You can actually just turn this into a landscape composition. And there we go. That's significantly better. That's the nice thing about the like 24 or so megapixels in the Sony a7 III, is that for photography like this that's like pretty high ISO, like it's expected that there's going to be grain, so it's okay for me to crop in quite a bit and actually see, like, once I get down to that part of the editing, I actually do tend to add a little bit of grain myself. What I'm doing right now is the specific adjustments for the tones that I want. So for example, this purple, you can see the color of the curtain changes, so I'm going to pull this more into the purple zone to give it a little bit more character. Same with the magenta. Then I'm going to get into my saturation, so I want to saturate my reds, yellows, and oranges a little bit because those are going to be my skin tones. And then take greens down, desaturate blues, and then saturate my purples. I actually can probably pull the blue down a little bit more because set of the show, the lights that they were using were very, very blue. And luminance, I'm going to bring their, again, reds, orange, yellow up, green, aqua. I actually can bring aqua up. I want my blues kind of dark. I'm going to darken my purples and then brighten the magenta a little bit. Got my color grading. So this is looking pretty purple. I'm going to take my midtones more yellow. And then for highlights and shadows, you want to do opposite colors. So we're looking pretty purple. So that up bump the color grade in that direction just a tiny bit. And then the same thing for the highlights. I'm gonna push it slightly orange. Also, because this is concert photography, I'm gonna add some grain. And then there's my before and after. I'm gonna save this as a preset because I think this is gonna be a good starting point for the rest of my photos because they were all shot under the same light, basically. Signals, Midwest, show. And then put that into shoot specific under my user presets. Which photo between these two do I pick? I've not done all that much concert photography before, but I do really like crowd interactions. And I think there's just a lot of really good energy in this photo. Gotta do the chromatic aberration. This was shot at 17 millimeters. I was obviously right up there. Exposure up so I can see what I'm working with. Contrast up, of course, because it's a punk show. Gotta get your tones really angsty. Highlights I'm gonna bring down just a titch. Shadows can come down. Whites can go down, and then blacks, I think I'm gonna bring up just a little bit, just so it's not too off balance. I'm gonna bring the texture up a little bit because I'm a sucker again for grain. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add a linear gradient. Brighten that up. If I go back, then I should be able to take the overall exposure down, and now we have a more balanced photo. And we can also see a really nice shadow here from Max's foot. So now next I'm gonna go through and do my exposure adjustments on the tone curve, darks up, and I think shadows down. Yeah, I like that. It's quite blue, so I'm gonna push this in red, especially now I can get the red in this woman's hair, the drum kit, and bring some of the skin tones that are starting to look kind of pale out. Green, take this a little bit pink. There we go. Now I can correct my now for my color grading. I'm gonna do orange. Red shadows, and then very slight blue highlights. Actually, may take this more green. Yeah, that looks good. Got my chromatic aberration already. Add grain, of course. Very slight vignette. I think I'm also going to do a black and white version of this photo. So I'm just going to go in here and create a virtual copy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me edit some of my photos. Make sure you go check out Signals Midwest on their socials. I will link all of the bands that performed in the concert that I mentioned down below. That's all I've got for you. Peace.